Think of your favorite TV show character, the one that makes you laugh when they say something funny, or cry whenever they're sad. Maybe you've even imagined yourself speaking to that character one-on-one. That strong connection you feel is called a parasocial relationship.
Our minds process faces in a very similar way, regardless of if those faces are two-dimensional on a screen or if we are interacting with somebody in person. And so in turn, we've kind of realized over time that the relationships that we develop with characters or celebrities, people with whom we see on screen and through no other means, are actually very similar in terms of the way that they develop and the kind of gratifications that we get from them as real life friendships.
That's Bradley Bond, an associate professor of communications at the University of San Diego. He says parasocial relationships are completely natural. In fact, the concept was discovered in the 1950s.
Two psychologists named Horton and Wohl came up with the concept when talking about how late night television hosts were engaging with their audience. So it was actually the medium of television that kind of brought forth the idea of a parasocial relationship, because your late night hosts, your newscasters, right, they break that fourth wall and they talk directly to the screen. And these psychologists were really interested in how that influenced people's perception that they were speaking to them. And so they developed this idea of parasocial interactions, which are the individual interactions that we have with characters or celebrities where we feel like we are in an engaged moment, which leads to a relationship.
However, the defining factor of a parasocial relationship is a lack of mutuality. You may feel emotionally invested and connected, but the other party has no idea you even exist.
The one-sided nature of parasocial relationships is kind of what makes them unique. And what we have tended to find is that those parasocial relationships, because they are strong social emotional bonds, they can be as influential as a strong acquaintance, if you will, but that our real life friends, are people that we see and interact with face to face, tend to be stronger influencers on our attitudes, on our behaviors.
But these parasocial relationships, even though they're one-sided, can still heavily influence our daily routines and emotions. This has proven to be a great marketing tool. The trust and admiration we have in a certain character, influencer, or celebrity can encourage us to buy the products we see them use. But since it's an unequal relationship, what's it like being on the receiving end? After losing her job during the pandemic, 23-year-old Victoria Paris decided to make her everyday life public through short videos online. Today, she has over 1 million followers watching her every move.
My job is just letting people in on my life, basically seeing what I'm eating, where I'm going, the places I frequent, and the stuff I like.
Paris has turned her personal life into live entertainment on social media. And though sharing her intimate thoughts directly to viewers creates a strong bond, it also gives Paris's followers an opportunity to criticize her life.
People feel a lot more entitled to me and to have opinions on me and what I do. And that's where I kind of push back. No matter like what the videos are, if they're about my relationship or my furniture, like I take all opinions with a grain of salt, because again, you're tuning in for me, not me and your opinion. And so I try to stay as true to myself as I can, but it's really hard when the feedback is so intimate.
Bond says that these relationships tend to be particularly strong with creators like Paris, who give viewers insight into their personal lives.
A vlogger on YouTube is typically vlogging from some intimate space, right? So from their living room or from a studio in their home that you recognize because they're always there. And maybe their cat pops up in the screen in the background, or they self-disclose really personal things. And so you have this really strong sense of authenticity that we kind of lack from celebrities, let's say, who we see as above us, whereas people on YouTube seem like they are us.
Making it much easier for us to create a psychological connection. And though the connection helps influencers grow their careers, Bond says it can be jarring when they meet fans in person.
Somebody comes up to you and they feel like they know you, right? They feel like you are close friends, then they are going to act in a way that is very different than if you're approaching somebody who's a stranger. To the YouTube vlogger, you as their audience member are a stranger, but to you, they're a close friend, right? And so there's that discrepancy in kind of even the way we approach a conversation with somebody if we think, right, that we know everything there is to know about them and we're close to them and we care for them, therefore they must care for us, when for these people, they're perfect strangers.
Paris says she's felt this firsthand through her career.
It's crazy because there's like a lot of people have like a visceral reaction to me where they either like love or hate me. And I get a ton of hate and also a ton of love, but both. The love shocks me more than anything, like these long messages being like, you changed my life, or you helped me with this or whatever. And it just doesn't feel real because I have no clue who these people are. I've never seen them, never met them. And so none of it feels tangible. And so it's just like the weirdest thing to think that you've affected somebody that you've never met, probably will never meet.
So even though her followers feel a sense of friendship, to Paris, they're still just names and numbers on a screen. This unique connection has put Paris in some frightening situations.
When people literally showed up outside my apartment and were waiting for me, which is like stalking, I made a very public video of me like breaking down for the first time on camera. I've been doing this for 2 years, like actually crying, like, you cannot do this. And if you're actually a follower of mine, you have to respect my privacy. But I didn't see like any other influencers my size doing that before. I just feel like there's this like precedent that was set to just like stalking is part of the job. And I was like, I'm not going to let that happen to me.
And stalking isn't the only problem influencers like Paris face. Bond says another negative aspect is the constant feeling of content-related anxiety.
So if a YouTuber knows that they have this audience who has this kind of really strong social bond, right, and they post every Friday and they miss one Friday for whatever is happening in their own personal lives, that they feel a sense of anxiety and a sense of responsibility to their viewers oftentimes in creating content.
Which is why Paris works every day, posting videos from the time she wakes up until she's ready for bed. Everything becomes content for viewers to consume. And though this all-access pass into Paris's life has created a strong bond with her followers, it's also generated a sense of constant paranoia.
It's like the little voice in the back of my head just getting like louder and louder, being like, how is this going to be perceived? Or what are people going to say about you? Or how are they going to tear you down? And then the paranoia got worse of like, who's looking at you on the street? Who's listening to your conversations? Who is going to like try to bash you online after? Or like, does this person know who you are? And so the paranoia crept in very early, like the self-awareness, which has been super amazing for my work, being self-aware and being able to make fun of myself, but it's also super crippling in trying to like exist and not constantly think of how I'm going to be perceived.
Bond says public perception is a pillar of parasocial relationships. If the influencer or celebrity does something that violates our idea of them, we'll subconsciously reassess that relationship we've built to see if they're still worth putting effort into.
So if you have a really close friend and they engage in some type of societally deviant behavior that you would never have guessed that they would do, that you yourself would never do, then you have to kind of reevaluate and reassess and forecast how important is this relationship to me. And you weigh the pros and the cons, and you think about that particular behavior and how much that behavior influences your morals or your values. And we actually do the same thing with our favorite celebrities and our favorite characters, whether they do something on screen or something in their own lives that we only know about through the media,
or even in a face-to-face interaction we've had with them. Bond's spoken with people who've met their favorite celebrity and left the encounter rethinking the relationship. Depending on the scenario, Bond says some people are able to either move past it or completely separate the encounter from who we want to believe the person truly is.
I interviewed somebody for a book project I'm working on, for example, who said he had a really strong parasocial relationship with Bill Cosby. And obviously my follow-up question was, and what about now? And he actually stated that he could separate the Bill Cosby that he's friends with, right? Or the Bill Cosby he knows to be somebody who would get along with, from the Bill Cosby who is a sexual predator. That they're two different people in his mind. And so he was able to basically realize this person violated my expectations, but then you weigh that dissonance and figure out how to overcome it if you think the relationship is more beneficial to stay in.
And though parasocial relationships can positively influence people, such as giving us a sense of community or even bettering our self-image, Bond says that influence can go both ways. For example, if you love watching violent shows and movies, those values of using force to deal with issues can seep into your own personality, even if we wouldn't normally accept them. Other behaviors, such as online bullying, can also be influenced. Seeing how other people comment can affect what you choose to write under a post. Paris says that's where social media platforms should step in and discourage that behavior.
I censor heavily. So you can censor, and TikTok is the first app I've seen really lead the fight in that to control the comments. It wasn't a thing that was there before, but I used to have to manually go through and delete every bad comment, which was super hard on my mental health, but so worthwhile because I don't have to deal with it now. And I have blocked all those people and controlled the space so much. But I definitely think that the app side could be doing a better job of that, of moderating, because again, the internet is the wild, wild west, and it needs to be moderated because there's kids on it. Imagine your 7-year-old child just using the app and pulling that up, and that's just the norm, that people bully so heavily online. That's not necessarily the right thing, and that's not how it should be.
So even though parasocial relationships are natural and increasingly prevalent in this digital era, there's always a risk of being negatively influenced through this connection. But for the most part, Bond says these relationships are only going to grow and progress as the internet continues to evolve. You can find more information on Bradley Bond, Victoria Paris, and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. I'm Reed Pence.
Coming up, the blood test that can put an end to trial and error medicine when Radio Health Journal returns.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
It's a field that is characterized as much by sets of opinions than by actual facts.
Why can't scientists agree on what emotions are?
Then every year, people die and are buried without any family to claim them.
They have no family who are willing or able to step up and handle disposition, and the county steps in, they'll cremate them and bury their ashes in a common grave.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.
I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
Only times there's change is when there's protests from the ground. People are protesting, they're voting, making their voice heard. Then the government responds with policies to help make changes.
The difficult conversations and actions that lead to greater equality and opportunity for all. Them.
It's a complicated and difficult road for transit outside of the places that really, really need it.
The state of public transportation in the U.S. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station and subscribe and listen to shows anytime on Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.